All right, welcome to Bet the Edge on Tuesday, September 20th. Thanks to everyone watching on our NBC Sports YouTube channel. I'm Jay Croucher. Here's Drew Dinsick. We're going to talk about both the Monday Night Football games last night and how we're rating those four teams going forward. We're also going to dig into the Coach of the Year market, which had quite a shift last night. And then we're going to target one game in particular that we're looking at for next weekend's slate. Drew, how are you? And thoughts on the games last night?
I am tremendous. Last night was super fun. Eagles come through for me. Second half under, and that Eagles Vikings game, 0 points scored thanks to all those red zone turnovers. There were a couple moments where it felt like that was going to get out of control point scoring wise, and then we end up with 31 total. No, those were wild games. The two home teams just absolutely dominating. And for me and for anyone sitting in the betting world, it's tough not to wake up on a Tuesday morning after seeing those two games in primetime and not think these are your best two teams in each conference.
Yeah, I like that. I think going into last night, we thought that one of those games featured the Super Bowl favorite and the other featured a frisky contender. And the easy joke goes that who's going to stop the Philadelphia Eagles from winning the Super Bowl after that? But let's talk about one of the losing teams first, because I think they're almost the team that has to have their rating adjusted the most. And that's Tennessee, who, even though they were 10-point dogs, they obviously don't come close to covering the line. They look dreadful. They don't look like a team anywhere close to the one that was a 1 seed last year. And now my proposition to you is, am I crazy to have the Jags favored in the AFC South right now?
You're not. And I woke up this morning and looked at that market and have been scratching my head ever since. They should not even just be favorite. I think there should be a little margin. Maybe I am being too reactionary on the Colts here and selling that team, but I don't know what these two of their easier games are behind them, and they have one tie and one loss. So it's going to be it's going to be pretty quick here that market crystallizes, because so many of the high leverage games are before the bye weeks come. And so that's one market where if you're going to get involved, I think you almost certainly have to act now. I would look a little bit more carefully at sort of the intermediate part of the schedule for the Jaguars. They catch a humongous break this week. The Chargers was sort of an automatically L on their schedule as you looked at the beginning of the season. Now that you may not have to face Justin Herbert potentially, or if you do, he's at least going to be somewhat limited in what he's doing out there. So that is a huge swing and win probability for one of the games that you kind of expected for them to take a loss. But to go back to what do you do with the Titans in terms of a market rating right now, I think they have to be in the bottom 10 pretty clearly overall. I think that offense has to be considered kind of borderline bottom 5. And the defense, which I had somewhat high hopes for coming into the season, has sustained a couple of injuries, notably Landry, and then a couple of the young secondary pieces just, haven't been able to stay on the field. And that was apparent last night. They could generate absolutely no pressure on Josh Allen. They had, busted coverages left and right, made the third quarter look very easy for the Buffalo Bills after they made a couple of adjustments at halftime. And the schedule gets no easier for these guys in the coming weeks. They have, one game against the Texans between now and Thanksgiving. Otherwise, they're going to be dogs in just about every single game here. They host the Raiders this coming week. And, I've seen some people make some pretty impassioned cases that the Raiders are underpriced as 2-point chalk on the road there. If that doesn't tell you where this team is rating wise by the market, it's not good. They follow that up with, at the Colts, at the Commanders, into the bye, Colts again, and then the Texans game that I mentioned. But then from there, from Halloween till after Thanksgiving, you get the likes of the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Packers, the Bengals, the Eagles. Season is a wrap at that point for this Titans squad. We could be talking about a 3-win team in December here, which is a long way from what was expected as they came into this season. So if you're holding an alt unders in terms of win totals for the Titans, I think you're feeling pretty good this morning. But again, over the long arc, this is good for the Titans. They should get, Malik Willis some snaps, see if they have anything there. They're clearly going to move on from Tannehill after this season. And I think if you're looking at the Titans through that lens, it all starts to make more sense.
That Raiders -2 line is it's crazy, and it doesn't mean that it's wrong by any means. But I mean, if you just think about the Titans being a 1 seed last year, not having a huge amount of turnover on the roster outside of obviously AJ Brown going, to now being a 2-point dog to the 0-2 Raiders, who snuck into the playoffs last year. I mean, if that was the first week playoff game last year, it would have been Titans at least a field goal favorite, I would have thought.
Or maybe more.
The other team that took a huge hit last night were the Minnesota Vikings, where obviously they get blown out. The Kirk Cousins jokes in primetime write themselves. I do think I wouldn't dismiss this team just because as badly as they played, they still had some just fluke plays that go against them. Irv Smith drops the walk-in touchdown, which would have really swung the game. They should have had the blocked field goal touchdown. They get tackled by the kicker, which isn't ideal either. And then the end zone or the close to end zone picks, they really kill you as well. The Packers, I think, rightfully shift back into NFC North favorites. But, I mean, what do you do with the Vikings now?
No adjustment for the Vikings. That loss was situational in my mind. Coming off of a huge win against the Packers in week 1, where you put all your cards on the table, you go into the Link, which is a nasty place to play in a primetime game. That crowd was lathered, and I think in general, Kirk Cousins obviously still has a ton of questions to answer about his primetime performances. Good news though for Vikings and Vikings fans. They only got one more primetime game on their schedule, and it's the Patriots, and it's on Thanksgiving when everybody's going to be sleeping after eating their turkey. So no attention at all on Kirk Cousins for the rest of the season. So, I think, realistically, though, I did not upgrade them as much as the market did after that Packers win, and I'm not downgrading them after this loss.
Okay, interesting. Well, no adjustment for the Vikings. You should give the Cousins family a call and give them that comfort, because I think you're being as generous to them as anyone in America. We'll get into the 2 winning teams. I think we'll touch on them in the next segment when we talk about Coach of the Year. But first, just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen in college football, Major League Baseball, and the NASCAR circuit, and in the Premier League. And there is also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome between the 49ers and Broncos in our Sunday Night 7 contest. Now, Coach of the Year. It's always a very interesting market. Broke my heart when John Harbaugh couldn't cash my John Harbaugh into Ja Morant, most improved player, 500-1 ticket last season. But the market shifted quite a bit last night, because coming into the week, Kevin O'Connell was just about favorite for the award, certainly in that top tier. Obviously, he takes a big hit after last night, especially because he lost to one of the chief rivals in the market. And now, as we look at it, Mike McDaniel is the favorite at plus 500. Then we've got Brian Dable, Sirianni, who makes the big move last night. O'Connell still lingering, Doug Peterson, my man Dan Campbell, who we'll talk about, and then Brandon Staley and Sean McDermott. Who right now do you think is the most interesting at their prices?
I have to circle Sirianni, and some of it is the top 2 in this market, to me, look like false favorites. This is not to take away from how these 2 men have started their tenure. And in general, if you are a new coach, you have an advantage in this market, because if you have surprise success in your first year, the voters cannot help themselves. They vote for you. Right. So McDaniel and Dable being at the top of the board is a great story. But I think the Giants ultimately exceeding expectations over the balance of the season is a tough ask. I don't think that's a very good team at all. I think they were relatively fortunate to be 2-0 at this point. And I don't think anyone could realistically argue with that. Market is still rating them as the 30th best team. And their expected win total as of today, even having won 2 games, is about 6.5. So Dable, you can pretty much write off in my mind, just because of the weakness of the team. And McDaniel is an interesting case, because we kind of talked about this yesterday. Miami's schedule down the stretch is brutal. And if you go back to your experience last year, and just in general, how these awards sort of get shaped in the final quarter of the season, if you're not winning down the stretch, you're sliding down this board. And you look at what the Dolphins are going to be asked to do with a back-to-back West Coast games against the Niners and the Chargers, followed up by a road game at the Bills, and then a road game, two cold weather road games, Bills and Patriots in December. That could potentially be 3 or 4 losses. And at that point, I think you pretty much are writing McDaniel off for this award. The flip side is Sirianni and O'Connell. They have 2 of the easier remaining schedules. Eagles, the easiest remaining schedule. Minnesota, the 4th easiest remaining schedule. And so those guys are going to compile wins. I got to put Sirianni at the top for me from a price standpoint, because O'Connell's still, like you mentioned, behind the Packers in the NFC North. So if you're not winning your division, it becomes that much tougher to get the consideration. But who do you make a case for at these prices?
Yeah, well, firstly, I think you make a really good point about McDaniel, where this award, I think more than any other, is skewed by recency bias. And so in pricing out this award, you almost have to project recency bias into the future. And the easiest way to do that is to look at the schedule like you did. And yes, if the vote was held today, McDaniel would win because the narrative is easy, and he goes to check his car is locked 4 times, and people really like McDaniel, and he's cool and he speaks well. So that's an easy one, but I agree with you on Dable too. Like, that team just isn't going to be good enough. And if you're looking to price out this award, the main thing historically is that you generally have to improve from a single-digit win team, improve by 4 wins or more, into a double-digit win team. And the worse your quarterback is, the better chance you have to win, because quarterbacks steal credit from coaches. That's why Matt LaFleur will probably never win this award, because people don't know how to divide the credit up between him and Rodgers, and there's always just going to be an easier coaching situation to point to. So that's why I land on Nick Sirianni as well. He would be my favorite for the award. He would almost be tier 1 by himself, just because I think there is a real chance that the Eagles are favored in every single game that they play this season. I think at Cowboys late in the year when Dak is back, that would be the only one. I think they'll be favored at the Colts. I think they'll be favored home to the Packers based on how they've played. So, if this is a 13, 14 win team, and Jalen Hurts, who has seen his stock soar, I still don't think that he's going to steal credit the way that Aaron Rodgers steals credit from LaFleur. So I think that Sirianni is in the box seat. The long shots that I would look at, 2 guys quickly: Sean McDermott, who will have a lot of credit stolen by Josh Allen. At the same time, that 15-2 and 16-1 is in play for the Bills. And if they just completely lap the league, it could be a situation like when John Harbaugh wins with MVP Lamar, or when Belichick won a couple of times with Brady, even not needing to have the perfect season like they did in 2007. So he's one guy I would look at. And then the main guy is my man Dan Campbell, who are the Lions, who might actually be good, and a plus 600 now to win the NFC North. Dan Campbell can't be plus 1,400 to win this award if the Lions are plus 600 to win the NFC North. If he wins the division and beats the Packers and the Vikings, then I think that he probably just wins the award.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. All of those points were just pitch perfect. I would love the Lions to be competitive, at least through Thanksgiving. Get a couple of upset wins in there would be just awesome for them to be in the mix for a playoff spot, because the NFC is otherwise weak, and the NFL right now really needs like a positive storyline like that, like the Lions kind of just putting it together for a season. Just a kind of the closing thought here for you. If the Eagles, who have, as we've mentioned a million times on this show, the easiest schedule remaining, if they win 14 games this season, 14-3 team, and they are almost certainly going to be the number 1 seed in the NFC, who gets any award, right? Like the voters are literally going to start by looking at the standings and like, wow, we got to give an Eagle an award. Who's it going to be? Well, there's no rookies really that warrant it. There's no, defensive player. Like, are we giving Jalen Hurts the MVP? Really? Like that, there's a mental block, I think, in terms of recognizing his, what he's doing, which I think by default, Sirianni is sort of going to be the choice. Like, we've got to recognize this Eagles success in some way. Coach of the year.
Yep, 100% agree. And that is so much the point of these awards, is that you're representing the season and the storylines of the season. And voters think about that. And if the Eagles are the 1 seed, they're going to need an Eagle on their ballot. And Sirianni above Hurts, I think, will be the play comes in of the year. Okay, we're going to get into Patriots Ravens in a second. But first, Matthew Berry's new show, Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, is on NBC, on Peacock. I'm the co-host of that show. Matthew Berry is back doing what he does best, rolling out his love-hate list, breaking down who to start and sit, and much more. He's also getting heavily into the betting. He gave out Stephon Diggs over 75.5 receiving yards last night.
Did that hit?
Cleared that pretty easily. 150 plus there. He also took Kirk Cousins under, I want to say, 275.5 passing yards, and that one cashed with ease as well. So he's riding hot. He's very happy about it. So plenty of actionable information along the way for sports bettors, in addition, of course, to all the fantasy discussions. So check it out. Weekdays in the afternoon on Peacock at 12 p.m. Eastern, and the Sunday fantasy football pregame show, the second hour of which is on the main NBC linear channel. That starts 11 a.m. Eastern through to 1 p.m. Eastern. You can also listen to the show in podcast form wherever you download and subscribe. All right, we're going to talk plenty about week 3 as the week goes on, but one game I wanted to highlight, just because I think it is a game where the line is interesting to people at this point, and that's Ravens -3 at Patriots. The total right now looking at 43 flat. Two weird teams at the moment, I think, where the Ravens would have been an easy team had they held on to their 35-14 lead against the Dolphins in the fourth quarter, but they didn't. Questions rearing their head about the defense there, and the Patriots have had an ugly start to the season, but find themselves at 1-1 with the Ravens. What's your look here at the -3?
So market's been a little quiet here, a little push-pull at the price point of 3. And we saw the Ravens get as low as about even at the market-making shops before a bet came in this morning on Ravens with limits up a bit. So now we're looking at about a flat 3. I personally like the Ravens in this matchup for a couple of reasons. And you can go back to last week where, it's funny because I bet against the Ravens last week and I bet on the Patriots this week. And yet here I am now turning around in full zigzag and NBA playoff zigzag mode. And I'm going exactly the other direction. But it's because of the takeaways of those two games. The thesis about the Patriots last week against the Steelers were they were in the perfect opportunity to make their offense look as good as possible. And that was the best they could do. It was extremely disappointing. They barely covered that game, and offense really just did not show me much in terms of progression. And I think honestly, they can probably come out of that game with some false takeaways. Like, oh no, we needed to run to put the game away, and we did. They were running against an absolutely gassed Steelers defense that was missing their best player. And so I think now you turn around and you play a Baltimore team that has a clear weakness when they're up against speed, and you don't have any players on your roster that possess that attribute who can really make a game-breaking difference against you defensively. And I think Baltimore's defense is going to be, I'm looking for a performance that is much more in holding New England into the 14, 17 point range than what we saw last week, where Miami just completely opened the top on them. So I do not think New England has the tools to do what Miami did in any way, shape, and form. And on the flip side, I think Baltimore, for me, I had them rated poorly offensively relative to market coming into this season because I just didn't believe that they had the weapons on offense for Lamar to have any kind of jointed success. I figured it was entirely upon him. But he's already developing chemistry with some of these receivers. They're getting healthier as we go through these weeks 1, 2, 3. And I think with Stanley back, potentially with Dobbins back, all of a sudden you are looking at a more like a true strength Ravens offense that has to be considered in the top 10 of the NFL. So with all of that combined, my fair price on this one is 3.5. Happy to lay the 3 with Baltimore.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think with the Patriots, they're a strange team to price at the moment because I almost feel better about their loss than I do their win, just because the loss against Miami, there was a lot of weird, fluky stuff in that game. The Patriots kept on getting stopped around the Miami 40, just drives happening to end in no man's land. They have the pick in the end zone as well. And I think if you're looking at the Patriots defense, adjusting for opponent, holding Miami to 20 might look like a pretty strong performance defensively when everything is said and done. At the same time, the offense is very problematic. And Mac Jones hasn't been, I'm the biggest Mac Jones supporter there is, but he hasn't been great these first 2 weeks. So I think, to me, that's the most interesting matchup, is Mac Jones against this Baltimore secondary, which we thought coming into the season was actually going to be a very strong unit. And now looking at it where, Kyle Hamilton hasn't been great, Peters, Humphrey coming off the injuries, that's a difficult spot too. I do think that the Baltimore offense, certainly the ceiling has increased, which is how good Rashad Bateman has looked, and adding that explosive threat into the offense with Mark Andrews. Offensive line getting healthier too. Lamar, I think his stats have flattered him a little bit. He really should have had a pick 6 to Xavier Howard against Miami. So I think 3 is fair. I wouldn't be rushing to back the Patriots at that number. I wouldn't be rushing to back the Ravens either. I think that is the right number. But I think that certainly we'll have a lot of clarity, especially about the Baltimore defense coming out of this game. So certainly one that we can revisit. Okay, that's it for us, Drew. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be talking a lot more about week 3 tomorrow and the rest of the week. So don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thank you for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.